The contemporary art world is vibrant and booming as never before. It's a 21st century phenomenon, a global industry in its own right. Brilliant Ideas looks at the artist at the heart of this. Artists with the unique power to astonish, challenge and shock. Push boundaries, ask new questions and see the world afresh. In this program, Bharti Kher. On the left,
Ideas. 2, 3.
Foreign-born of Indian parents, Bharti Kher was brought up amongst the public schools and private estates of an archetypal English suburb. This was an upbringing that she rebelled against when, at the age of 23, she left London behind and moved her life and her heart east to join the other 16 million souls already living in India's capital, Delhi.
To be an outsider is very interesting because you have a very different perspective. You see things that other people don't see.
Bharti Kher's perspective is always fresh because there is something pugnacious. She's got her dukes up. She's not going to pull her punches if she has a certain perspective.
Ever since her arrival, she has been wowing the art world with her ever so slightly outsider looking in, somewhat skewed perspective on life in India and beyond.
She represents one of the best contemporary artists of India of today's times.
A classically trained painter, Bharti's body of work expanded to include sculptures and installations which challenge cultural and social taboos, as Bharti is only too happy to explain.
There's extreme research, there's intense thought, and there's an honesty about her which percolates her work.
I have some of my most interesting conversations with Bharti Kher. There's a great curiosity in that mind.
I was born in 1969. My parents came to the UK in 1967. So I grew up in a place called Epsom. I went to school there. And I think, yeah, growing up in the suburbs is a uniquely British experience, isn't it? And the suburbs were uniquely white, actually. Being different teaches you a lot of resilience. It also makes you understand quite clearly what you want, who you are, and it certainly gave me a very strong resolve that I would not stay in the suburbs. My father's from the Punjab. My mother's family originally is from Pakistan. When they went to England, my mum didn't speak English. When I came to India, I didn't speak Hindi. So, you know, I've sort of done the reverse of what they did. It's quite strange. I was very fortunate to have the most extraordinary art teacher at school. So he kind of opened a door for me. It was this door, it was a place of magic and alchemy and creativity, and I was absolutely convinced that I was going to do art. So I decided to go to university, and I went up to Newcastle. I saw the studios were huge compared to everything else, including actually a lot of the London colleges. I applied, I got in. So at the time I was a painter, and I was absolutely convinced that I would never get into an MA program because I wasn't making installation and I wasn't doing photography and I wasn't looking at video. I don't know, I just thought one day, you know what, I should just get out of here for a while. And so I wondered whether I should go to New Delhi or New York, and I flipped a coin, that's what I did.
Literally, you flipped it?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. I came to India with a 6-month visa and didn't go back.
When Bharti arrived in Delhi in January 1992, she stayed with friends of the family, who set her up with a studio in the center of town. Very soon after, she met her future husband, a struggling artist then, but now probably the leading contemporary artist working in India today, Subodh Gupta.
So very early into my trip in India, I met Subodh within perhaps a month or so.
But you didn't speak Hindi and he didn't speak English.
No.
That must have been interesting.
Yeah, it was. Very interesting.
Through the mid-90s, Bharti became a working artist, immersing herself in the Delhi art scene.
Modern Indian art has progressed in waves through anti-institutionalism. It hasn't grown in institutions, it's grown outside them. And she would have certainly been a part of it in the early 90s. She and Subodh both.
She was by this time married to Gupta, and they had had the first of their 2 children. They were both starting to gain some recognition. But did they ever collaborate artistically?
Subodh and I, we've never worked together. We did one project together, I don't know, 15 years ago, and decided it was not a good idea. So, yeah, our works are very different. The subjects that we deal with, the way that we create is quite different. And it's nice, we're autonomous in our own ways. So, yeah, when I came to India, then I think for about 6 years it was quite tough for me. I really had to find my way. That wasn't about being an outsider. I started to go out to the markets, and that's what I was doing. I was sort of just going out and seeing, okay, what is India? What is this country? What's it about? What are the people like? What do the women do? How does it feel on the streets?
These visits to the Delhi markets started to mold the way Bharti saw life and, more importantly, gave her the inspiration she needed.
A lot of my very early works were about the observations that I have with just a slight strangeness, which is what my work is. So the works like Her Suit, which are the moustaches. So I did a project where I just went out and photographed men's moustaches because it seemed to be sort of exclusively Asian trait, especially in the city of Delhi. It was also about the male gaze. So I was trying to deal with my own body in many ways. How was I to deal with the feminine in specifically masculine spaces? Yeah, the body, certainly the female body, is something that I've looked at. Also, this sort of the magical reality where the work goes off into the other side, and I made the photographs, and they were the hybrids, and they were really about who are these women who are sort of part human, part animal, part mythological. They were very early pieces. They're everything, and they're you, and they're me. I mean, I don't have a problem with the word feminist, to be honest. I think that in today's society, if you're looking at social, political, and economic truths of how half the population of the world has to deal with their day-to-day lives, I'm okay with that. After
the break, we see how Bharti's life changed when she started experimenting with different mediums. Award-winning Indian artist Bharti Kher had always been first and foremost a classically trained painter. But it was when she started to experiment with other mediums that her works became more popular.
I started moving away a little bit from the painted image, and I started making sculpture, and especially looking at objects and the ready-made. And I made this very early piece called Asian Babe, and it was partly a toy that I'd taken from my son, and it really was the first time that I took something and stuck to change the surface of an object. She also had sound. She had this little Indian doll head of those dancers that sort of move their head from left to right in this very sort of cliched Indian, yes, no, like this kind of way. And I think for me that was the first time I was able, I can take this, and I can take that, and I can take that, and I can put them all together. And I think I still do that. It was exhibited by Nature Mort. Peter Nagy showed it. I think it drove him completely nuts because it sang the Macarena. Do you remember that song? Horrible song it was. And after the show was over, he was like, "Thank God, I'm so like, take this away, take this work away."
Bharti had also been working with something she discovered all those years ago during her first visits to the Delhi markets.
I remember just walking through a market very similar to this in a small part of Delhi, in East Delhi, and just going to the local bindi store and just sort of looking and seeing that they had these snake bindis. And this snake bindi would look like a spermatoza. And I was really struck by how sort of hybrid it was as a form.
The bindi is a little sticky, colorful sticker, which is mostly round-shaped, which we put here in the middle of our forehead. And typically in India, only married women used to wear bindis.
So I literally just, as I was shopping and walking through, buying, just looking at the market, I bought this, 6 packets because I always buy more than one of everything. And I stuck them in my sketchbook, and that's kind of how this started.
This relationship with Bindi slowly developed to become a huge and vital component within Bharti's body of work.
Here is a person who views what is incredibly Indian with eyes that are slightly different.
For me, it's a conceptual idea for the consciousness. It's both secular and ritualistic. I don't think I was even looking at all of that when I first started making the Bindi works. It was very simple. I just picked up a ready-made, it was a sign. I thought, let me use this. Maybe 2006 is when things started and I started to make sort of international exhibitions and people saw the work. And of course, the work, The Skin Speaks a Language Not Its Own, is a piece that most people know my work by, but that was also a sort of breakthrough piece just in terms of I was aware that I had now activated a material that had its own meaning. The piece is a life-size sculpture of a dying elephant. It's covered in white bindis, and the bindis were able to, as opposed to working on a two-dimensional surface, the bindis were able to actually lift an object at the scale of an elephant and to actually make it float, but also to talk about the life and to think that the skin is perhaps like a palimpsest of many layers of history, mythology, geography, space, the idea that perhaps I was speaking or I was communicating with this elephant. So I sort of create narratives in my work, and I create them for myself because I like it.
The white elephant, it really makes you stop and think. To seeing an elephant in that position is almost sad and makes it so vulnerable and makes you feel vulnerable at the same time. It is works like this that make her undoubtedly one of the main contemporary artists of the country today.
In 2015, Bharti was awarded the Chevalier des Arts for her contribution to the landscape of contemporary art.
Bharti is a really hard-working artist. She's a workaholic. She works morning, noon, night. I think her market is way bigger than one award. I think she's proven herself time and time again.
India's influenced my work profoundly. I think you see it in my practice. I don't really see how it can't. I think all artists are deeply influenced by where they live and where they work. I'm a bit of a collector, so I like buying things that I think have some value, some intrinsic narrative to them. They sit for me and wait for me until I'm ready to use them.
Bharti still visits the same markets that helped her get a handle on life in India 23 years ago.
I think, the reason I come to markets like this is because I'm interested in the domestic space. And so I think a lot of my work goes back to the idea of the interior space. And it's something that I've referred to in my practice from the very, very beginning. And so this is why I continue to use objects that have history, that have some kind of decay, that have an element, they're visceral as well as visual. And so for me, they sort of almost do half the work for me. And then what I do is, like what all artists do, is then the transformation happens in the studio. So this is my studio. It's on 3 floors. I've been here for 5 years and really grown into the space. I love it here. The light is fantastic. This is a new project I've just started, so I'll be working on this for the next few months with all these figures and figurines. These are the sari pieces. This is an ongoing project. These are saris that have been painted and dipped with resin. I call them portraits of women, and they're all people that I know. This floor is where I sort of finish all the works and look at all my works. Downstairs is where I make the Bindi works, and the top floor is where all the fabrication of all the sculptures is done. So this is where we paint and prepare all our Bindi boards. I have a set of carpenters downstairs who make all the boards first in wood, and we cover it in a teak. And then these guys, the painters, spend about 5 to 6 days preparing the surface. The reason I do it in the studios is because then I can quality control the finish and then I can approve things, and if they need to be redone, they get redone, basically.
And this is particularly unpleasant standing here doing this.
Yeah, it's not good stuff because it's car paint, so you actually should be wearing a mask. So in the studio for me is like a bit of a kitchen actually. It's like there's lots of pots cooking at the same time. The way I approach my work is very plural and quite fluid. So I start some projects just because I want to play with the material. I start others because it's a line of inquiry. A lot of the times my work is ideas based. So the idea is imperative to how I begin the project. The ideas generate the next ideas. So it's sort of like a lot of experimentation.
What would you say your work is about?
Lots of things. Lots and lots of things. I think essentially it all comes back down to the body and the engagement of the physical self in a space. So even the more abstract pieces, even the Bindi pieces, even the sculptures, there's a deep concern, a genuine concern about not just the physical body, but also the journeys within the body.
Bharti's work makes a statement on the state of women in the world in generally, and in specific in India.
I think Bharti has two distinct forms of practice. One is the Bindi works. They deeply affect the senses and they're chromatically very engaging. But the sculptural works that she likes to do are edgy and much more disturbed. They deal with issues of eros, death. They violently displace expectation. And that's what makes them so challenging.
As you look at this work, you clearly see the depth, the creativity, the boldness that comes across in her works. The painting speaks to you differently each time you see it.
After the break, we discover how Bharti's work continues to develop in new and strange directions. Having been an internationally renowned contemporary artist for nearly 20 years now, Bharti Kher has amassed a back catalogue of work, charting her move from painter to sculptor and installation artist.
I think, all artists have a famous key piece, and sometimes those pieces actually haunt many artists, actually. So, although I have a very strong affinity to the skin speaks a language not its own, sometimes I just want to run the other direction when I have to talk about it, because I actually love my new children. I love my new babies much more. When you ask me what's my favorite work, it'll always be the work that I'm just making now.
Bharti's love affair with the Bindi continues to develop. So much so, she has an entire floor of her studio dedicated to it. And it's here she continues pushing her work in new directions.
This is the Bindi Playroom. Yeah, this is the place where I make all the Bindi works. So, if you look at the Bindi works, there's sort of a microcosm and a macrocosm to them. So the smaller works start to feel like, especially the new body of work now, they're kind of like dark matters, helic DNA sequencing. For me, the map work is really exciting. So I think that's taking the work in another direction, where I'm actually able to use a surface underneath that I don't have to create myself. Like the ready-made, again, like going back to stuff that already has its own intrinsic value.
Some canvases, she's able to use that round circle bindi to create moods and to create textures and colors. So it's the way that she uses that one form, which is a sticky bindi, and create something that's so extraordinary and appealing.
Many times people come up and tell us, oh, but isn't it too repetitive? It's like saying, isn't Kusama's dots very repetitive, or isn't Murakami very repetitive, or Jeff Koons or Damien Hirst, or even Rothko? I haven't really seen a very different Rothko one from the other. It is what it is. They spend lifetimes researching and understanding that material and using it as expression.
Yet another of Bharti's new projects for next year's Sydney Biennale is being worked on in the sculptural fabrication workshop up on the roof.
This is part of a new project that I'm making for a Biennale next year, and these are casts made from plaster. So about a year ago, I did a series of body casts. Casting is very much an integral part of my process. For me, it's a way of understanding or looking at the body as memory, especially as the skin. And so that's something that's continued through my work. For this project, it's probably the first time that I'm working directly with plaster. I think it's probably one of the oldest casting techniques in the world. It dates back to the Egyptian times. The technical problems of doing something like this is that plaster is obviously really fragile. So what we're doing is we're reinforcing the inside of the plaster with a resin and also putting steel plates all through the structure. So we build it backwards. Transport is probably one of our major challenges, actually. Shipping really large, because a lot of my works are very large and very fragile. Our customs is pretty dreadful. So, you know, if there's something that says fragile this way up, it'll arrive in Delhi upside down and chucked off the back of a truck. A lot of the works that I make, I have to think about, I know the maximum size of a crate in India that goes by air freight, which is 7.5 feet wide. So if I make anything that's much larger, it has to be dismantleable. So a lot of times, you know, galleries or artists, why do you make these works that are so difficult to assemble? It's like, well, I wouldn't be able to get it out the country otherwise. If we want to make them big, we have to reinvent them somehow. Sometimes that's really advantageous because it really helps you, changes the way you look at the work.
With every reassessment of her work, for whatever reason, Bharti seems happy to move on and try something completely new.
I think with every major work, takes a step into an area which she doesn't know. I think that's important. She has to test the waters. She has to step into the dark.
I think my risk-taking is very slow. The process in the studio is long, thought and processed, and so if you take risks, it might just be that you're not sure how a work is supposed to be or how it's supposed to look at the end. Sometimes you just have to let the work take you where it needs to go. I think now I'm much more centered and happy in my own skin. I've got to the point where, yes, I know what I'm doing in my studio. I have confidence in my practice, that I'm actually a practicing artist. You know, it takes you like 10 years to actually say, yes, I'm an artist, because you have to keep doing it every day. So now I've done that, I've got that all out the way. I think I'm quite happy just to come here to my workplace every day. I like my routine. I like doing the same things all the time. And I find a lot of peace in the studio. So that curve, I don't know whether it's a curve or a circle or a spiral, or I don't know what it is, but yeah, you just keep going.
She's creative, she's smart, she's dynamic, and I'm quite sure her best is yet to come.
When I view a Bharti work, I think if anything, it's uplifted the viewer experience for Indians. It's uplifted what we should expect or what we would want around us, or our expectation or what contemporary art should be. Or I think she raised the bar.
I think the first 10 years is one curve, the next 10 years is another, and now I'm in the third one. So let's see where it goes. I love doing what I do. Yeah, I love it.